Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, can you be a good moral person without believing in God? We're going to discuss it, so go ahead and keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck. Somebody emailed in,
Yeah.
gave us a topic. Your topic could be next. You see how we can butcher all your thoughts.
You gotta cut that part. That's
Why?
we're gonna get canceled. It's just that I don't want to be like Kanye or trying to grow our podcast, man. It's the opposite of what we want to do.
Remember, the show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, simply by searching for Mount Hermeneutics. And if you've hit your notifications, then you don't have to even search for it. It's right there. And if this is your first time with us, I am Andre. That is Matt and Brian. What's happening, fellas?
Hey Trey. Hey Matt.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh man, so you must forgive me. I've been involved in exercises.
Yeah, I could
and
tell you were heads down because you weren't in any of the chats. Even
yes,
you didn't even get into the PED discussion.
I know. I wanted to.
That's
It was
how I
like
knew you were otherwise disposed because I was
it
like,
was
Trey's
like
not even
early
in this.
morning. I chimed in, and then I had to get out of here. So yeah, so I don't really know what we're talking about. And
So at a high level, Brian wrote a lot in the response, but I think
I,
at a simplistic level, what we were going to talk about was um, religious holidays. That
oh,
is that was that what we were going to do? Am I
I
right?
I thought we were gonna do the thing about that movie clip that you showed.
We could do
Um,
that also.
um, I mean, I'm good either way.
I don't even remember what he said in the movie clip.
yeah,
I just
Well,
remember I liked it.
it was about removing Jesus and being moral, right?
good morals are the enemy of Jesus Christ, he said.
Oh,
Right.
right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, right.
And
Yeah.
when I suggested we watch the movie, I meant like maybe if we're going to do a podcast on it, we should watch it. But we're probably fine. I looked it up to see if that was some famous theologian that they were depicting, to see if like his point had been like formalized in doctrine, and like maybe if that was like some famous theologian who's the whole thing had been vetted, but not really. It's just a fictional character. It's some academic. They made a movie about Christians made it in 2002 about somebody wanting to present the teachings of Jesus in a book, but without mentioning Jesus. Um, and that occasioned the discussion about good morals apart from Jesus, and how there's you know can't have them. But anyway, this was Matt's thing, so I'll let you.
Oh, I mean, that was essentially it. I mean, it dovetailed into a conversation I saw, and this is, show content, but I saw a thing the other day where the guy makes the comment. He says, the devil never tells you to follow him. He never asks you to follow him. The devil asks you to follow your own ideas. So it's just a slight deviation off north, right? But if the idea is if you're just a little bit off the north, then you travel for a whole lifetime, you're way off course,
Right.
right?
Right.
And this video was kind of saying the same thing in that you can be a good person, but that ain't going to get you to heaven,
Should we
philosophically speaking or metaphorically speaking. But the point being is it's not the path to God. The path to righteousness is not being a good person. The path to
Mm.
righteousness is, no one will know the Father but through the Son.
Sh-
So that was what I thought was interesting.
Should we play the clip on the show?
I think so. Yeah, I think that makes sense,
Do,
and we can react to it rather than us trying
do,
to relate it.
I
Yeah,
assume you know how to do that.
I have it up right now.
Against good morals. He is opposed to Jesus Christ. A man can have good morals his entire life, yet you and I know he will go to hell when he dies. It is Jesus Christ that everyone needs, and the devil knows this more than all of us.
Dr. Anderson.
Satan's goal is to remove the name of Christ from his commands, and when we do this, people are deceived into thinking that if they live a good life, they will receive God's approval and attain heaven.
I think we can use morals to attract people to the Lord.
Yes, but the ultimate issue in Christianity is the authority of Christ. And the devil is attacking this authority by convincing us to teach morals alone. And our young people are becoming more disrespectful. Now, I believe that this is a direct result of eliminating the authority of Jesus Christ from his command.
I came across that the video the other day and shared it with you guys. It struck me, right? I feel like there's a lot to unpack, and even though it's he's only kind of saying one thing, it reminded me of another commentary that I had heard a few days prior. It's always nice whenever you have successive things that you consume that continue to build a point into your head until you're like, I get it now, right? But basically, and I know we've talked on this show about the moral authority concept, right? That if it doesn't come from somewhere, then it kind of meaningless, and it's hard to say this is or isn't moral, because from where do you gain the basis of what morality is?
You have to have
I'm
a
assuming,
standard that you're referring to,
right? Which I'm assuming is really what the gentleman in the video clip was getting at. But I'd heard another take that said that never, even in the Bible, really, but you never hear about or even think about the fact that the devil, Satan, doesn't ask you or coerce you to follow him. There's never this dude with hooves and horns on his head, and he goes, "Hey, you should follow me. It's really cool. Come do this stuff." That's really not the point or the technique or the draw. That it's really about, hey, you should just do what feels good, man. You should do what you want to do.
He asks you to play the best song in the world, or he'll eat your soul.
Right, with a fiddle.
Oh, I guess that was just a shiny demon. It wasn't necessarily Satan himself.
No, that was the devil went down to Georgia.
Yeah, it was the devil, because the band of demons joined in.
Well, that's a totally different song than what I said.
Oh,
But
what are you thinking of?
play the best song in the world, or I'll eat your soul.
Oh.
Jack Black and the
Yeah.
Tenacious D.
Yeah, this is not the best song.
It's just a tribute.
Okay.
But in all seriousness, that's not the technique, right? The technique isn't, here's the book of the devil to follow. Because there's a Satanist handbook.
Well,
they're all retarded.
More specifically, he attacks your relationship to God.
Right.
And he attacks your identity as in relation to God.
But I think I would argue with the word attack, because he doesn't attack it in the sense of, hey, this is BS. He basically slowly makes you think that you're doing the right things by doing the wrong things. Right? I think that's the whole trick that no one understands. It's a perpetual subtle course change. Right? We've all, military.
I think we're talking about different stages along the way, though.
Perhaps.
To the person who doesn't really think in terms of, there's the popular objection to Christianity. Can I just be a good person and God will accept me? But they're doing it without any real regard for what good even means. Morality is relational. If you're the only person who exists in the universe, then nothing's right or wrong. You are the only authority. You're not accountable to anything beyond yourself. But if there's another person, then that person has intrinsic value that you have to honor. And that's only that's only if there's an authority over you to whom you are obligated to obey. Like I'm thinking like in terms of like Ayn Rand's morality. Like she's 100% correct in terms of the horizontal orientation of her morality. That like the you have to, if you don't recognize the intrinsic value of other people, like that you don't necessarily need to believe in God to recognize the intrinsic value of other people. But you're not necessarily obligated to recognize that intrinsic value if there's no God. It's to him that you're accountable to do that. So
No, I
but
think that's a fair way to say that. I think if I was to shorten and unbundle what you said, can a non-Christian be a good person? Yeah, but you're still not going to know God,
well,
and you're not going to have salvation through
in
that behavior.
a relative sense.
Yeah, yeah, because that's
Um,
all you can ever do is be relatively good.
well, I don't think that's true. I think the point of Christianity is that I mean, we're told on no uncertain
I meant
terms.
the non-Christian.
Sure.
Yeah,
But well, then I don't need to make the point I was going to make.
that's
But
why I stopped you because
but
we were already agreed. I didn't state that clearly enough.
well, but it is kind of an important point. But I'm sure we'll circle back to it. But well, I'm going to say it because that is another thing that Christians love to go to wallow in how unworthy we are. The person in the Bible study who is the most contrite over what a rotten sinner they are.
Mhm.
Well, that's the most spiritual person in the room. And it's we've all been in those gatherings where there's the guy who's I'm the chief of sinners. I'm just um, Paul was talking in the past tense when he said that though, but the and we kind of use that as an excuse to kind of lower the expectations. Like we don't expect to be righteous because of total depravity, because of that's kind of the doctrine that we're conditioned to believe. But no, we're told that if we trust in God through Jesus Christ, we have his nature within us, and our faith justifies us as if we have kept every requirement of the law, and we have the righteousness of Christ in us. And so we are worthy. We should have high expectations of ourselves, which should make us even more contrite over our sin. But we kind of tend to to speak of our unworthiness as like that's the default, and it's just sort of expected. And I think
That's an interesting take. Yeah,
I,
I don't necessarily hate that. I think
I
there is a lot of that in the circles, right, of people that they go out of their way to say, "Ah, I'm a dirtbag, I'm trash," and then that enables them or it engenders them to then be a dirtbag and not actually strive to be better because
yeah,
if they walk around telling people, "Oh, I'm just me being me, Manny being Manny," kind of thing, then it, yeah, there's no expectation. And I guess the alternate view is there's always, the person that acts like they're perfect when they're not, right? And I think everybody dislikes that person so much that they over rotate the other direction. Maybe I'm just kind of trying to think about why, right? Because that's always, one of the big um, knocks on Christian circles is that there's
yeah,
always everybody
Yeah,
acts as if they're holier than thou.
I I think it's a in my experience, it's more of a humble brag. It's even worse, right? Like, oh, I'm such a dirtbag. And then inevitably someone's like, no, you're actually the greatest brother ever. Right? Like, man, shut up. We know we sin. I like now I can see if you're giving young people advice and you're like, hey, in your relationships, don't do this, or when you're dealing with people, don't be dishonest in your dealings. Let me tell you the time I was dishonest in my dealings and it hurt, right? Like I learned a lesson so you don't have to. You know,
Yeah, and it's
but
not about
don't like I'm such a sinner, so there's I have a built-in excuse to just do whatever the fuck I want
yeah,
because
and and if you're not acting in love, then yeah, you're a phony.
right.
However, moral you are, if you're not if you're if you're trying to lord it over people, if you think that your personal holiness it amounts to moral authority over them, that kind of misses the point. The point is that you love them as Christ loves them, so you want what's best for them. That might entail telling them things they don't want to hear, but it's never going to come from a place of I am morally superior to you, therefore you have to bow to me. That that misses the point. If
I think
it's
it's kind of that personal martyr syndrome, right? You ever have that boss that like doesn't go home, but you
Hmm.
stay way late, and then
Yep.
and you come in the next day, it's like, "Oh, I stayed here till whatever." I'm like, yeah, and what'd you accomplish, right? Or you're like, oh, you're just saying that to make me feel bad or make me stay later, and
Hmm.
yeah, you're just martyring yourself. Like, I'm not impressed that you stayed late.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by your production. If you stay late and you're just knocking trash out left and right, well then you're a badass,
I'm
and
still
I'm
not
not worthy.
impressed because you're just winning with horsepower.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm impressed
Yeah,
if you can outproduce me and you hear less than me. That's when I'm impressed.
I
yeah.
don't have
So
that problem at my work. They back when we worked in the office, they would kick you out if it was like 5:01. Uh-oh.
No, it's fine. I keep going. My video's inverted from when I shared that video, and it's freaking me out.
Um,
it's freaking me out,
but
Jerry.
anyway, nobody cares about my office life. But I when I saw that video clip, I had actually just studied Matthew 8 through 12, and I felt like I had a really I don't have the same clarity on whatever I was thinking at the time that I did when I wrote that. Um but it kind of it kind of offers the other side to the point of that video though. So as we've discussed before, the Gospel of Matthew is divided into five discourses, and it's like all of it's like you have the Sermon on the Mount as the first discourse, and then you have in Matthew 10 what's called the Apostolic Discourse, but chapter 8 through 12, the content of those chapters kind of plays into the theme of the discourse, which is Jesus is giving his authority to the apostles to go out and do the things he's been doing by showing the authority of God over disease and death and demons and preaching that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Um, and then you have the parabolic discourse, and then the discourse of the church, and then you have the Olivet discourse. Each discourse kind of builds upon the points made in the previous one. So it kind of creates a you're not really getting the whole picture of Jesus' teachings with just one, or of course a verse out of context. But what kind of jumped out at me about the discourse on authority is kind of in juxtaposition to that clip. He is like the theme of authority keeps coming up in those chapters, and it starts with the centurion coming out and asking Jesus to heal his servant. And Jesus wants to go. Okay, I'll go heal him. And the centurion stops him. No, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. But I myself am a man under authority. I tell a soldier go and he goes, and a servant come and he comes. And so I know that if you just give the word, my servant will be healed. And Jesus is impressed with his faith, but you have that idea of authority because he's under the authority of Caesar. That authority then it's delegated for him to command soldiers. Likewise, Jesus is acting on the delegated authority of God. But it's one of the things that jumps out at me about from these chapters is that he's anybody who recognizes that he's the Messiah like the demons he's driving out, or a leper that he cleanses. He sternly orders them not to tell anyone that he's the Messiah. Like he's not disclosing that yet. What he wants to get through is that the authority of God is here. And then there's a kind of a debate later on between him and the Pharisees about whether he's acting on God's authority or whether he's acting on Beelzebub's authority. And how a person answers that question is that it dependent on their faith. If they're being honest, if they're being intellectually honest, they recognize that this is God at work here, and they put their faith in God through what Jesus of Nazareth is doing. But it kind of just it kind of raises the question of, well, what does it mean to follow Jesus Christ, to be a part of the kingdom of God? Does it mean subscribing to a name or a face? We don't know what the face of Jesus looks like. So what does it mean to follow him as a person? Which goes back to the morality thing. It's there's sort of a paradox there, in that you can't be a good person by following morality, but you need Jesus Christ. But what does it mean to have Jesus Christ? What is it that makes up the person of Christ, that we are in him? And it kind of, the I guess the thrust of all that is that morality has to kind of have a personality. It's not about following a set of rules. It's about embodying the spirit of God through Jesus Christ, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of
You're on mute.
can't hear you.
Let me take a shot at a really stupid analogy that I think
Okay.
encapsulates what you just said.
Well, what I think it's something like a Zen koan in a way.
Well, let me try this. So I knew a guy that had been driving for a very long time in his adult life, and yet didn't have a driver's license. And when I say driving for a really long time, he was living on base and driving around on base and coming and going and doing all manner of things. And then we went on a TAD trip together, and I realized he didn't have a driver's license. I then wouldn't allow that guy to drive my truck, because if we were to have an accident, my insurance wouldn't cover it. Right? Well, it did. The fact
Tell the
is,
listeners what a TAD trip is.
Temporary assigned duty. It's you've probably heard the terms TDY if you've ever been around other military folks that are not cool, like the Marine Corps and the Navy. But it's when you go on a business trip, basically. Good catch. But the point of this is that this individual was a fine driver, knew all the rules, didn't get pulled over, didn't get accidents, knew how to maneuver the vehicle from here to there, follow all the laws, yet didn't have the authority to be operating the vehicle, and would not pass muster if brought in front of the magistrate, who then said, "Why were you driving?" And they would have been like, "Well, because I'm a great driver." "Do you have a license to drive?" Well, see, what had happened was, right? Like, to me, this is kind of it's a course analogy to this, but I think it fits, because 99% of the time, it doesn't matter if you have a driver's license, right? Because you're going to come and go and do all the things, as long as you can operate and not get in accidents and do all the things properly. But when you get hauled in front of the authority, right, it matters. And the outcome of that being in front of that judge is going to be made or broken. It's going to make or break. It's going to be made, or I don't know how to turn that into that tense.
Made or broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be made or broken based on whether or not
making or broke.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work, does it?
What if that person can bench press a lot?
So, spoiler alert, that person was Andre Bibbs.
Oh. That's funny.
I think the first magistrate that it did not pass muster was his young wife. So it was but she had to allow him to do all that stuff because you had to do things and
Yeah.
stuff, and
Yeah.
I had to get to work and
Right.
not wake her up while I have babies
Yeah.
and and stuff. So
Do you have a license now?
I've had a license for a really long time. In fact, I got a license right after that trip. So
Yeah. Like in all
because my
seriousness,
man was a cigarette smoking,
man,
whatever caffeine thing we had back then in 1998.
yeah,
You
that
know?
was a rough trip. We were like halfway into the trip, Brian. And the whole story is we were both going on orders to analyst school, to ALARC at Goodfellow
Yeah.
Air Force Base. Well, that's in basically Midland, Texas. We were in Fort Meade, Maryland. And we were going to drive because why wouldn't you drive? Because you want to have a POV when you get there, a personally owned vehicle for the listeners. You want to have your personal car. We didn't want to be like the nerds from Radio Battalion that flew in and then had to beg for rides.
No, we had island beaters.
Yeah, but
You don't get an island. I mean, they don't pay you for a rental car. They don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are on your own.
yeah,
This is
and it's the
America,
middle of
son.
nowhere, Texas. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, you could walk around on base, but even the base was pretty big.
Right.
And so we drove. Well, then we had the really bad logic that, well, we'll just drive after work today. So we didn't get up like first thing in the morning and leave for a 27-hour trip. We worked a full day and then took our time and got on the road for a 27-hour trip. But I'm still thinking it's fine. There's two of us. We're young. We'll just rotate driving duties. We're about halfway down the road. And I don't know, just casually, Dre's like, I don't have a driver's license. And I was like, what?
I've known you for years.
And I'm like, dude, I can't let you drive if we wreck. Like my truck will be, I'll be made and broken. It'll be
So
terrible.
in March of 1994, this story is relevant, and not really, but it is. So, a girl came to my hometown, and I met her. She started having car problems. So her roommate actually flew back to Utah and she needed someone to drive with her when her car was fixed and went back. And that someone was me. And I'd known her for a week or so. Delani Matthews at the time. And so I gathered my entire $6 that I owned in my life. And I got in the car and was on a trek to Utah with a girl I didn't know. We got past Vegas in and then into the southern Utah, and then she's like, "Hey, I'm tired. Can you drive?" I was like, "A and B, I don't have a She's like, "What? Wait, what?"
So what I'm hearing is this is a trend where you spring this on people in the middle of road trips.
Middle of road trip. And I also wasn't confident in driving a stick at that point.
That's fair.
Because she was like, she probably would have just let me drive if it wasn't. And I was like, well, I don't really drive sticks. She's like, oh, okay. And it's, there's like, it's snowy. It's not like California. So she trusted nothing and was super pissed and flew me home promptly after. I don't know how she lives in my house today, but that was the start of our relationship. I didn't lie. I just, omitted the fact that I couldn't.
You're going to road trip? Absolutely.
She's like, then why do I have you
There's
here?
always an assumption that you're also a driver when people are invited on road trips.
She's like, why do I have you? I'm like, I'm the muscle.
I don't think I drove once on the way back to Oklahoma from Pensacola that one time.
That was only like 10 hours, 12 hours.
But anyway, Brian, what were you gonna say before I broke in with my pattern of omission driver's license?
He's a habitual license omitter.
I'm trying to think of how to bring that back to the
authority.
Well, I mean, that was how I got there. Was my loose interpretation of the point is that you can do all the things, but without the actual authority to do them, you fall short of your standing, right?
And what's to stop you from just doing whatever you want on your own, just changing your mind, right? Like, if there's no real authority, if the authority is just, we're moral, then what's to say that's moral tomorrow?
I think that's what you're seeing in society today,
Yeah.
right? Is the morality moves with the whims of the culture rather than being locked.
Yeah, and I think that, and I've been thinking about this a lot since the election. Um, because like there is a lot of, there's a lot of moralizing there's a lot of moralizing from the left. The right, we're all fascists and
We're weird.
Nazis and we're weird but it's yeah, if the question is who is it for? Who are you living? What is your morality for? Who is it for? If it's, if God is not you know, the, the point of reference for your moral compass, then who or what is? I think the default setting most people have is I think most people's moral compass is oriented toward positive self-regard.
Hmm.
That's kind of what, and that's not that that's wrong. Everybody has that. But I think if you're following Jesus Christ, or if you believe in God at all and you feel accountable to him for your morality, your positive self-regard is predicated on what is he likely to think of you. Um, if you don't if you haven't thought about that, your positive self-regard is basically, what does your tribe think of you? What is
Right,
your
I was
social
gonna say that
setting?
a lot of people turn to their family. What does my wife think of me? What do my children think of me? I'm like, I choose a path left or right because my kids are gonna see this, or they're gonna notice me, or they're gonna
Hmm.
grow up thinking I'm a certain way. But even your family and your tribe, they also change with the winds of culture or
Yeah.
personality, or
Yeah.
or their feeling toward you, right? So I mean, it's you married 30 years. I'm positive the woman hasn't thought of me the same for those 30 years. It's ebbed and flowed. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's a
But
shit.
sometimes it's lousy, you know what I'm saying? But
And that's why Jesus said, anyone who comes after me must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me, or his wife and children, or his brothers or sisters, even his own life, cannot be my disciple. Like, it has to be him above all else, or your moral compass is orientated to the wrong reference point.
and then you're a lieutenant doing land nav.
For the listeners, lieutenants don't know how to do land nav. Um, Land nav is where you use a map and compass to find your way in the field, and lieutenants can't do that, at least according to Marine Corps lore
Lore.
and
It's
stereotypes.
Oh
So,
no, it's lived experience, that's for sure.
Right? Is it? It's not lore. It's pattern recognition,
It's
as
well,
as
every
as is the new trend.
stereotypes tend to be predicated on a kernel of truth, at least.
Right?
So,
and there's a lieutenant right now. It's like, put a land nav. I'm like, whoa,
Right? No,
we ain't talking about you,
ALT.
dog.
ALT. No, you can't.
The
And just to give reference to the my little outburst a second ago, this is the. I feel like this is important.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
There you go.
okay.
that's my relationship in a nutshell. I mean,
That's one of my favorite little video memes. He's a soccer coach, and he's not having a good presser.
presser meltdowns are great. My favorites.
So in
That's why you should
math,
watch sports, Brian. Presser meltdowns.
um, okay, I like boxing.
Nice.
Boxing has decent press, but those pressers are different. It's because the guy's like concussed and he's still in the middle of the ring, and they're like, "So what'd you think?" And he's like,
They're all kind of silly. Hey, you won. What do you think? Yeah, how'd you do it? Oh, we scored more points than the other people. We tried really hard,
"We
and
wanted it more than they did." That's the one I hate.
yeah,
We just wanted it more. Okay.
a lot of
Those are
sportsing
those are bad
happened.
answers. That means you have not been groomed well at the podium if you say some nonsense like that.
I
Mm,
saw I saw a really great one the other day. It was a young basketball player, football player. Anyway, he was asked a question. He misheard the question.
Oh, yeah.
The question was, have you ever had more fun playing the game than you are right now? Because he's in such a good groove. What he thought he heard was, have you ever committed more turnovers than you did? And the kid goes, well, and he gave like a 5 minute, super like rich, well spoken, articulated, like philosophy answer.
Like he rehearsed it. Like he knew it
Well,
was.
like he just took the question, really internalized it, and like, he sounded like Jordan Peterson the way he answered. He's like, well, you gotta, what is a turnover? And like, and he was just being really deep about it. And then the whole, like, everybody was being politely quiet because he was saying such good stuff. And they were like, I think maybe you misheard my question. And then they told him the real question, and he laughed. He goes, "Oh, that would have been a lot easier to answer. Now I'm having a blast."
And to fairness to dumb athletes, like reporters are lazy and they ask stupid questions.
What does it mean to you to win? It
Like,
means
I mean,
everything. That's the worst question and the worst answer that happens over and over.
I
in
would hate to
sports.
be a sports reporter. I couldn't do it.
and I think with all the grief people give Tom Brady, yesterday he asked really good questions to lead
Did
that
he,
dumb wide receiver into good answers because he's not a bright kid.
who
But
was who? I don't know.
Puka,
Oh,
Puka,
Puka.
yeah.
So
So
in Matthew's gospel,
I don't know why that's funny. Matthew's gospel is a serious document.
It's the best gospel.
um,
That's what they say.
so
I
in
don't say
Matthew,
it. They say it.
Matthew doesn't say it.
can ask anyone. People often
They say,
people often do.
Sir, Matthew was the most serious of the gospels. And anybody named after him is equally important. The best. I don't say it.
Okay, so oh yeah, the authority thing. Like anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. So you have the Sermon on the Mount where he describes kind of what what the kingdom of heaven is like, who the people in the kingdom of heaven will be like. Explains the point of the law, to show that we need a new nature. And then he talks about false righteousness, hypocrites, wolves in sheep's clothing, beware of false prophets, the narrow road versus the wide road. Then the second discourse is about authority, and there's this kind of debate over is his authority from God. The Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. It's authority that Jesus delegates to his disciples. Is the authority from Beelzebub or from God? And so it's basically homing in on people understanding that he's acting on God's authority. But then you have the parabolic discourse where it starts in chapter 13. He speaks in parables, and his disciples ask him why, and he tells them, well, to you have been given the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to the rest I speak in parables, so they may be ever hearing but never understanding, ever seeing, never perceiving. But so basically, like he's giving his disciples the truth of his teachings, but it's withheld from the public. And it's not that Jesus is withholding it, it's that they're blinded to the source of his authority because because their faith is orientated somewhere else. They trust in their religious traditions over what they see with their own eyes. They the Pharisees use the traditions of the elders to kind of condemn Jesus and to justify to tell the people not to listen to him, basically. And this kind of works. And it should kind of cause us to look at our own, just as if love your own family more than Christ, your moral compass isn't orientated correctly. If you're trusting more in your traditions and your I was reading this book by Thomas Merton that a friend of mine recommended to me. He made a really good point about how we often think of faith as passive acceptance of convention.
I
just
think that's
because
fair.
it comes from a a church setting, from an institution. And I think that's and you see that throughout the Gospels as a barrier to recognizing Jesus as the Messiah. Um, it's they kind of like in the movie clip, um, good morals are the enemy of Jesus Christ. Good religion is the enemy of Jesus Christ. Trust in institutions and religious authorities is
And to be clear, when Brian, when you say that, because you might have said that, and likely somebody went, "Wait, what? Good religion is bad." Good religion as opposed to good theology is what
well,
I
I
assume you
mean,
mean.
I mean good religion in the sense that if you read Matthew 13 through 17, you have the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were considered the most righteous among the Jews. They were the purveyors of Judaism is the right religion with the right God, and they were the authorities in that religion. Yet following them led away from the very object of that religion, and that should that should be a caution dot to everybody. So when I say good religion, I mean it in that sense. So yeah, I can elaborate if you
No,
want,
I
but I
think I
think
get it. I
that's
just wanted to clarify that because I feel like that phrase sampled, if somebody was kind of like, listening, they might have gone, "Wait, what?" And then
yeah,
their
that's
head
fair.
blown off.
But
So
and to be honest, if I heard somebody say that, like I get really annoyed when people like, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. Well, it is a religion, but I mean, so,
the whole
but
I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
which drives me up the wall. Oh, yeah. So
I
you're a
mean,
Jedi then.
go ahead and offend me. That's fine. You
Oh, is that you? Is that your?
totally.
Oh, well. What do you mean by that, Dre?
What do you mean by that? I don't find religious traditions to be uh to my liking or understanding yet. So maybe I will.
Often when people say that, what they mean is,
I'm not like one with the tree, right? Like I believe that I have a relationship with God, and I guess I've been pointed in several directions, but I haven't found the the road that is religion. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think what
if
I'm
someone
what
asked me if I was a Christian today, I think the short answer is yes.
uh-oh. Well, I guess that.
that was the
No,
craziest
it's not.
place to have a
So
data
there's some
freeze.
tenets of Christianity that
So you froze up, Dre.
yeah.
I'm not going to
You
edit that because that was amazing.
yeah.
Was that Max Headroom there? Like what?
Yeah, you said, I guess the short answer is yes,
And you literally froze like
and
that.
that's where I left it.
And we're
And
both like,
we're like, cool.
Yeah.
Dre is saved, everyone.
so Dre, I think
What's
there's a difference in all seriousness.
Well, I want to hear the long answer. I assume he
But
followed that up with
well, I mean the well, if you want to say that I believe in Jesus Christ, yes, I'm Christian. If you want to say that the other tenets and all of the things that many religions say you must believe about Jesus Christ, then no.
So what
And
I would
yeah,
what I would offer as a kind of an explanation or a differentiation, typically the people that I hear say, "I'm not religious, I'm spiritual," that's a way to say, I'm kind of aware that God exists, but I couldn't be bothered to attempt to learn or follow the rules. And so I'm just going to say I believe in God, and that's good enough. That's
well,
or
that's the experience that I have with people when they say that. And now my new response to that is the devil believes in God also. Like,
Right.
Or it's just a license to just kind of believe whatever they want without any
Right.
real,
right.
like it's there, there's this
Well, most of the
pronounced.
circles that I roll in that say things like that are people that are, into yoga and stars and
Hmm.
things of that nature,
Witchcraft.
which is also different, right? Like, or maybe that's their religion, right? And so
I think it's
there's
probably close to a religion at that point. Yeah.
um we have a pronounced lack of any sense of accountability for our for what we believe, for what we do, for our morality. Um, and I think that's kind of a problem. And I
Are you
think
speaking broadly or are you speaking within Christian circles?
I'm speaking within our culture. And
Okay.
what I meant just now was like in popular culture, that's the case. But I would, as I kind of, look at why that is and how did our culture get that way, I, and you kind of peel back the onion and look at what's the underlying problem here and under here and how do we get from that. I think it's the failure of the church. I think that we and I've gone into this before. You ask, before I was a Christian, and and people would invite me to church, and I'd ask them, okay, but why do you believe this stuff? Not, as a gotcha or to pick a fight, but I really wanted to know, like, why do you believe in God? Why do you believe the Bible is his book? And they would typically kind of clutch their pearls, and it was their response was sort of, well, what, you don't?
Hmm.
We talked about how most people
this ain't about
they're
me.
well,
Ask you.
yeah, and they make it sound like, well, it's just virtuous to believe this for its own sake. It doesn't have to be justified. That is virtue itself. Because, back to what we said earlier about how most people's morale, people aren't rational by default. Um, they are
Say that again, like to
people
make sure
by
everybody hears that.
people by default are not rational. They don't build their belief system and their worldview from the ground up based on observation and evidence and reason and logic. They're typically conditioned into a range of attitudes about what's right and what's wrong, what's valuable and what's not, by their social group, and then they might use their rational faculties as a post hoc justification for those attitudes. Like, they'll form the beliefs to kind of give voice to the attitudes, and then they'll kind of maybe, like, come up with arguments after the fact for why their beliefs are correct. But they really just kind of they typically just got their attitudes from their peer group. And
Mhm.
that is as true in churches as it is anywhere.
I've got a
And
different. I'm agreeing with you, but I have a more specific slant to attack. If this helps your point.
and I would sum that up as the aforementioned passive acceptance of conventions.
I
Um,
I agree with that. I think the problem is if you put a gun to my head and said simplify the problem statement to something, people, humans, Americans, Christians lack intellectual curiosity. We are so happy to just be told something and then just move on. And, why is this? Because why is the sky blue? Right? Like, kids ask the most interesting intellectual questions because they're genuinely curious. They're trying to your point, Brian, young kids are trying to build a worldview. Dre, you're probably seeing it a ton right now with your
Yeah,
granddaughter.
for sure.
Grandkids, I'm sorry, you have more than one.
Yeah.
You have access to one a lot
But
more.
I have one that chats a lot, so I could see her worldview
Right.
actually
Right.
growing.
And think about, because Dre, I know, you're an intellectually curious guy that has probably grown a ton in the last decade, 2 decades of your life, from when you were a
Sure.
kid, from when you were 20, when you raised your kids.
Right.
So think about how much more you're able to actually seed her process as she's building that worldview that Brian was just talking about. And think about if you could have done that to your other kids in the way that you're able to
Man,
do it to your grandkids.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting observation I have of myself. Just, patience and listening, to actually listen, right? Not be concerned about whether or not I'm gonna move on to the next thing in my house, right? Like I got a kitchen to clean or something to cook or something to pick up or a yard to mow. I don't have time to answer questions from a toddler.
Hmm.
And you know, and then things also were just very, listen, if I told you something, that's what it is. There's not a bunch of follow-ups. You don't get to disagree with me. You don't get to argue with me because once you argue a point where, where an adult says, "Hey," and you say something else, the next is getting smacked on the
Do you
head, right?
remember me and Wixon getting into it?
Uh, about what specifically? Like this is
Yeah. So
Matt getting into it with authority? No way.
so he sounded like that comedian Norman. Anyway, um, we had one of our platoon sergeants back in the day, staff sergeant at the time, Albert Wixon, and he was an infantry crossover. So he had started in the infantry where there is no questioning of anything. You just, if he says jump off the cliff, you jump off the cliff. Aye, sir, as you're falling, right?
Yeah, right.
And I was attempting to become a leader of Marines, right? And Wixon would tell me, "Hey, go do this and make this happen," and I'd be like, "What? Why?" And it was about the third or fifth or 10th time that I asked him that, and he was like, "Listen here," and he was like, "I'm going to kill you," and I was like, "Hey, look," and I said, "I get your." Your unwillingness to have a junior Marine question you. I said, I need you to understand that my questioning is coming from a place of me trying to learn how to be a staff NCO. And I'm never going to be you if I can't understand what's going on in your head. And mashing me through something is not the way I learn, and I will not become a better Marine because of it. And he was like, "Oh shit, that was a really good response." And so and so we worked out a deal that
Okay.
he was like, "All right, look, here's the deal. If we're not in a critical moment, it's not tactical, and it was never tactical because we were in the rear, but if it's not a real time event, I'll have a conversation with you. But if it's something where there's lots going on, and especially if there's a bunch of senior Marines around, you're not going to question me out in the open in front of everybody, making me look like an idiot. Come to me after the fact and we can have a conversation about it." And if he goes, "And even if you think it's downtime, and if I give you the look after you've asked, just shut up and do it, and then hold the question and we'll talk about it later." But I was like, cool, I can respect that because I understand this is still the Marine Corps and this isn't, debate club.
Right.
I was just trying to learn. And I learn by asking questions and questioning and arguing, hence why we have this show. But it was cool. One, I give him props for accepting my style, right, and adapting, because I'm sure it broke every law of the Marine Corps and he had built in his body on how to deal with junior Marines.
You're probably lucky to be alive.
But I mean, that's not the only time. I mean,
Right.
there's the list of Marines that probably should have killed me is long and distinguished, like my Johnson. But that intellectual curiosity. I'm always stunned when people aren't curious about things. Like it doesn't compute in my head. I'm like, aren't you interested?
That
Don't you
was
want to
my
know?
issue with COVID. I'm like, well, let me see the study.
Why are you a science denier? Wait, what?
I'm like, it
I'm
doesn't
somewhat
make
of a
sense to
scientist
me.
myself.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but and if you're telling me this thing, then make it make sense.
Yeah.
Maybe the document will make it make
Yeah.
sense. I'll read it.
Yeah.
Or I'm listening to different doctors have different opinions. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I don't know who to follow yet, except, my I intuit that I should follow this guy. You know, uh but yeah, seeing a 4-year-old ask questions, and then when you give an answer that's even true, give you side eye, like, is that true? So what I tell her, I'm like, well, you don't think it's true? tomorrow when you get to school, ask your teacher, and when you get to, ask your other grandfather if he believes that's true. And when they give you the wrong answer, you can come back to me. I'll give you why everybody else is wrong. But yeah,
I had
it's fun. Disneyland is a really not patient place, right? Because there's a million people walking around, and I've got a little girl that just wants to do this or that, and you know wants to hang on rails. And in my world, everything was disciplined. You don't hang on the rail. You stand in line. You march straight in line. So I was like, you know what? Hang on the rail. Hang on
what's
the
the
rail.
worst that could happen?
Right? I mean, I'll watch her in case she falls. Wear your dress. Now, if she, got her little Elsa dress dirty, then I'm like, hey, get off of there. You're gonna get your dress dirty. But
But
that's
she
the
can
reason. Because,
also respect that rationale. She's like, oh, you're right. Thanks.
right.
I don't
So
want to get Elsa
and that's
dirty.
really what I'm like. I don't want you on the rail because you're gonna get your dress dirty, and that's different than you're gonna fall and get hurt. Because then they argue like, no,
I'm
I'm
not gonna
not.
fall,
I'm dope.
right? I got mad reflexes, yo.
Like, why would I fall? What's this? So it's good. It's a weird experience, and it's crazy how much you start learning about yourself, through the eyes of uh, of others.
Yeah. Real quick, funny anecdote my mom told me, which I totally believe, is her mom, my grandmother, was not the patient teaching type. She's old, super old school authoritarian. And as a little kid, right, I questioned all the time. And I remember my mom told me one time that my grandmother had said, why don't you just beat him when he argues? And my mom looked at her and said, because that's how he learns. And if I beat him, he'll never learn. And luckily for me, my mom understood my personality type early on.
You could have been
Because
traumatized, an idiot, stupid and angry.
Mhm.
Could be a
Yeah,
totally different. That could have been your villain arc.
it could have been. Yeah.
You know that video of that little kid going like, Linda, Linda.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Listen. Yeah.
yeah.
That, like, the first time I saw that, I thought like that looked like you as a kid. That was like that's absolutely Matt Moore in like a tiny
I
little package.
it probably wasn't dissimilar.
Right. My little Layla's very much like that.
Yeah.
Like, what? Okay, you're not listening to me. That's why you're not telling me yes.
You don't understand what it is I'm asking. Let me
What
try
I
again.
what I appreciate about this little girl the most is that she's so solution driven. She's like, oh, that's why you're saying no? I
I'll be
got you,
right
fam.
back.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh, you're finished. Well, then allow me
Right.
to retort.
Or like, I guess she wanted like a popsicle, and I'm like, hey, I'm watching this thing. When the commercial comes on, I'll get up, and she's like, I can get it myself. I said, then by all means, get it yourself. So she just has a solution for
Next time
everything.
you hear a chair being drug across the floor.
She's a resourceful little girl. It's
That's
fun.
funny. That's good.
So
Um,
That's pretty good.
did we solve
I think we wrapped it up. Yeah. And
whatever.
we,
Yeah, we
whatever
solved
we
it.
yeah.
um
Any final
hold
thoughts,
on.
Brian? I know
Hold
you read
on.
Matthew.
I did. Serious gospel.
It's
I had some. You
Some
brought
say
up
it's the
Jordan.
best.
You brought up Jordan Peterson. I got some thoughts about him, but maybe that's
Is that a different show though?
maybe.
Yeah, I think it is.
I'm really annoyed by
You want to
him.
tease everybody what that topic is? Because I agree with you, and I think that's a separate show though.
I've been watching Jordan Peterson's panel discussion on the Gospels,
Mhm.
and it is utterly preposterous. It is it's just absolutely absurd. And
Nice.
In what way?
You're not learning your odds of learning anything about what the text is actually saying from what Jordan Peterson is saying is very low. I'm not going to say there's no value to what he says, but whatever value there is, it's kind of accidental. Like it's just kind of a law. Like if you throw enough spaghetti at the wall,
At
some
no
of it will.
point did you make a single cogent thought, and we're all
You know,
dumber for having listened to it.
I think that's good too, because as conservatives, we get we get put in this box where we think of these guys as gods and we agree with everything they say, and it's just simply not true.
Yeah.
There's of course a lot of these personalities, the reason why I listen to these personalities is because I do agree with many takes, but
I do love Jordan Peterson. I do.
right, and
I
that
have a
was my
lot of
point.
respect for the man.
You can respect somebody and vehemently disagree on even an important topic like the Gospels, I mean, we're still friends, right? So that's that guy. But I think I mean, we're growing. You're growing. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson should have me on those panels, and I would.
I
Ooh,
agree.
So I could say thank you.
we need to pitch it.
Yeah,
I'd pay good money to see that interaction.
yeah. I probably would like Dennis Prager's on it also, who I
I'm not a fan of
absolutely.
Dennis Prager.
I revere Dennis Prager.
I like him.
What do you got against Dennis Prager?
Don't say 'cause he's
I
Jewish.
honestly forgot. There was a specific interview that I saw and I was like, "What?"
Oh,
I'd
you
have
probably
to go,
you disagreed with him, right? So
but it was like it it was too much.
okay.
It was like he broke some kind of hard rule in my head. I don't remember
Huh.
what it was, to be
That's
honest.
interesting.
Yeah,
I'd be
the
really
fact that I
interested
can't
to know what that
articulate
is.
it is problematic.
Just praise you jettisoned him. You're like, I'm out. I'm out on
I
this
think so.
guy.
I think so.
I
I like their content on the internet. Broadly speaking, I'm a fan of the mission of PragerU.
Yeah.
But I can like that, not like Dennis Prager.
When I
He
first
also has
became
a punchable face.
Okay.
Mm. When I first became a Christian, and I was just buying up like every book I could find about like Jews and why they don't accept Jesus, because it was like I was really wrestling with that. It's not that
You were perplexed. You're
like I understood like scripturally like that this thematically according
mm,
to the prophecies and types, that's what had to happen, but like as a like just talking to like I don't know why Jews on an individual basis could not see that Jesus is the Messiah, and it totally just like I had to, I kind of obsessed over it, so I bought a bunch of books by Jews addressing that question. um Later on found out years later when I discovered that Dennis Prager as the the pundit, like I just happened to notice like a ton of those books were by him.
mm.
And like I didn't really know him, like he was just like some Jewish author. Now
Nice.
just to wrap that side quest off, when I went to Israel and I like spent time in Jerusalem and met Jews, and I actually was invited to the yeshiva, and I debated these things with Jews in person. That resolved it for me. Like I don't know that I've ever been as confident that Jesus is the Messiah than I was debating Jews on the point, because their arguments just like I'd read their arguments and evaluated them and didn't find them persuasive, but I never really like had my own positions pressure tested before, like and been challenged on like why I rejected those, to see kind of how they would rebut, they would they would cross-examine me, and it was yeah, so it was that trip settled it for me. But anyway, I've had a long relationship with the work of Dennis Prager, and I think he's a
Pause.
Yeah.
I think he's
Yeah.
a I think he's a great man, and you're wrong. So
Okay.
sorry.
Hey, so if you're still with us, thank you. And if you got any questions about what we brought up, where you think we're right or wrong, please hit us up. And yeah, with that, I will say stay enlightened, stay curious, and we will see you next week. God bless.